The message hit my phone at 2:13 a.m. in a temporary barracks. Dust in the air, fluorescent lights buzzing, my boots still on. A photo popped up, my sister smiling in front of a brand new restaurant sign. Maggie May's Table. Paid for with the Lakehouse my grandmother left me, and under it, a little smiley face, like she'd just sent me a cute vacation picture. I was 6,000 miles away, serving overseas, and my family had already sold my entire childhood out from under me. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever felt underestimated, used, or told to just get over it, hit like, subscribe, and settle in. And comment where you're watching from and what time it is there, because this one ends with the kind of justice that makes your chest feel lighter. My name is Helena Wolf. I'm 28. I'm a captain in the United States Army, and I never thought the hardest part of deployment would be what happened back home. Not the heat, not the stress, not the long shifts that blurred into each other until you stopped remembering what day it was. No. The hardest part was realizing my family had been waiting for the perfect moment when I couldn't fight back, to take something that belonged to me and then act like I was the problem for being angry about it. And to understand how they did it, you have to understand the house. The Lakehouse wasn't just property. It was proof. Lake Meredith was where I learned how to swim, where I scraped my knees on the dock and my grandma cleaned the cuts with a wet paper towel and that patient sigh people do when they love you too much to scold you. It was where I cried the night before I shipped out the first time, face pressed into an old quilt that smelled like detergent and sun-warmed wood, because I was terrified and I didn't want anyone to see it. My grandmother, Margaret Wolf, but everyone called her Maggie May, owned that lake house for 31 years. When my parents' house felt like rules and tension and silent punishment, the lake house felt like oxygen. My grandma was 5'2", stubborn and sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She taught me how to gut a fish, balance a checkbook, and stand up straight when a man tried to talk over me. And I didn't realize until later that those weren't just life lessons, they were armor. Because my father didn't raise daughters, he raised a household. My dad, Richard Wolf, sat at the head of every table like it was a throne. He managed a bank branch for decades and brought that same energy home, everything measured, controlled, approved. He kept the budget on a spreadsheet. He reviewed purchases over $50. He didn't yell often because he didn't have to. His silence was a weapon. My mom, Diane, played peacekeeper. She hadn't worked outside the home since I was little, so her whole identity became keeping my father calm. Her favorite phrase was, "Your father knows best." Even when he was wrong. Especially when he was wrong. Then there was my sister Vivian, 3 years older, prettier, softer, and always safely within my father's orbit. Vivian could quit 4 jobs by 25 and still get rent money. Vivian could find herself for years without consequences, because Vivian was the one who stayed, and I was the one who left. I joined ROTC in college. I loved the structure, the clarity, the feeling that effort mattered more than family politics. And the Thanksgiving I told my dad I accepted my commission, he set his fork down like I'd insulted him in his own house. He looked at me and said, in front of everyone, "You'll regret this. The military doesn't care about you." My mom pressed her napkin to her mouth. Vivian stared at her plate. Nobody defended me. Only one person drove me to the airport when I shipped out for Officer Basic, my grandmother. She hugged me at the curb, arms surprisingly strong for her age, and she whispered something I carried through every exhausting week after. "This house will always be here for you, Helena, and so will I." I didn't know that was the last summer I'd see the lake house with my name still connected to it. I was 14 weeks into a logistics deployment in the Middle East when I found out my grandmother had died. Not a phone call, an email. Subject line, Grandma. Body. Your grandmother passed Tuesday. Funeral is Saturday. We understand you can't make it. 4 sentences. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like my organs shifted. I stared at the screen in the mess hall while trays clattered and someone laughed too loud at another table. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped the floor. I walked outside into the heat, into sunlight that felt wrong, and I called home. My mom answered on the 3rd ring, voice already tight like she'd rehearsed it. Helena, honey, everything's already planned, she said. There's really no point in disrupting. I can be there by Friday night, I told her. I'm getting emergency leave. A pause. I heard my father in the background. Low voice, controlled. Then my mom again, softer. Your father thinks it's best you stay. You'd just be rushing in and out. Grandma would have wanted you focused on duty. That sentence hit like a slap. They didn't want me there. I sat on my cot after that call, staring at the concrete floor, hands shaking, heart too loud in my ears. At 3 a.m. local time, I watched my grandmother's funeral on a shaky live stream. The camera trembled like someone's hand couldn't stop. Vivian stood at the podium, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, reading a speech off paper like it was a presentation. Grandma loved all of us equally, she said. She'd want us to stay together, to take care of each other. I turned my phone off. I lay in the dark listening to the air unit rattle like it was trying to breathe. 200 people attended. Not one of them called me. At the time, I thought it was thoughtless. I didn't realize yet that they needed me absent. 2 weeks later, an email came from my grandmother's estate attorney, Philip Darnell, PDF attached, Last Will and Testament of Margaret E. Wolfe. I opened it in the mess hall and scrolled with my thumb like it was any other document. Savings, bonds, personal items, split between me and my father. Then I saw it. The Lakehouse, 1,140 Lakeshore Drive, assessed at roughly $450,000, left to Helena Wolfe. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I read it again, and again. It wasn't just money. It was my grandmother saying, I see you. I stepped outside and called home immediately. My father answered. Dad, I said, voice unsteady. I just got the will. I can't believe Grandma left me the Lakehouse. Silence. Not thinking silence. Calculating silence. Finally, he said, flat. We need to talk about that, Helena. She was clear when we talked, I said. It's what she wanted. You weren't here, he replied. You don't know what she was like at the end. And then, we'll discuss it when you're home. Click. He hung up. I stood in the sun, staring at nothing, sweat collecting at the base of my neck, feeling something cold begin to press against my ribs. I called the attorney, Mr. Darnell, who said everything was proceeding normally, nothing to worry about. And I did what people who still believe in family do. I assumed they wouldn't actually do it. Deployment swallowed time, 14-hour shifts, convoy schedules changing, supply chain chaos. I emailed my father twice about probate. No response. I called my mother. Everything's being handled, she said quickly, like she was trying to get off the phone before I could ask too many questions. Your father's dealing with it. Can I talk to him? He's at the hardware store. I'll have him call you. He never did. At night, staring at the ceiling, I could feel it, like pressure before a storm. Then I called my grandma's neighbor and closest friend, Maggie Calloway. she answered like she'd been waiting. I saw a for sale sign near the lake last month, she said. Couldn't tell which property. My breath stopped. I told her it was probably nothing. I thanked her. I hung up. But my stomach already knew. That night, in the communications tent, I pulled up the county assessor's website on my laptop. The overhead lights buzzed. My fingers trembled so badly I mistyped the address twice. Finally, the record loaded. Owner of record transferred. Sale date, March 14th. Seller, Helena Wolfe via power of attorney, represented by Richard H. Wolfe. Sale price, $450,000. I stared at my own name on the screen, like it belonged to someone else. Because it couldn't be real. I was overseas on March 14th. I knew exactly where I was. I could picture the warehouse, the pallets, the dust. I called my father. He answered on the second ring, casual. Helena, good to hear from you. Did you sell the Lakehouse? I asked. 5 seconds of silence. Then he said as calmly as if we were discussing groceries. It was the right thing to do. You forged my name. I made a decision for this family, he said. That's what fathers do. My body went cold, like every emotion drained out at once. My hands were steady when I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there under those buzzing lights and felt something inside me change shape. Not break. Harden. That was the moment I stopped being his daughter and became his plaintiff. 2 days later, my phone vibrated during a briefing. Vivian. A photo. Her standing outside a storefront, smiling in an apron, arms open like she was welcoming the world. Behind her, a wooden sign in pretty script. Maggie May's table. Under the photo, one line. Thanks for your service. Grandma would have loved this. My throat tightened so hard I thought I might throw up. She named the restaurant after our grandmother. The grandmother whose Lakehouse funded the whole thing. And she sent me a smiley face like she'd done something sweet. I left the briefing early, walked back to my quarters, sat on the edge of my cot, and opened my laptop. I emailed a JAG officer on base, Major Daniel Crow. Subject line, I need legal advice. It's personal. I attached. County Assessor Record. Vivian's text screenshot. My grandmother's will. Then I sat in silence. I didn't reply to Vivian. Not that night. Not that week. Not for 3 months. Because my silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Major Crow met me the next evening in an office made of plywood walls and fluorescent light, the kind of place where everything feels temporary, except consequences. He asked questions like a surgeon. Were you stateside on the sale date? No. Did you sign a power of attorney? No. Did you authorize anyone, verbally or in writing, to sell that property? No. He wrote something down without looking up. Then we're looking at forgery, he said. Possibly wire fraud. And there's something else working in your favor. He tapped the paper with his pen. You were on active duty under federal orders. The Service Members Civil Relief Act doesn't replace your civil claim, but it tells a judge exactly what happened here. He finally looked up. Judges notice when someone targets a service member because they can't fight back. I swallowed. Can I handle it quietly, within the family? Crow's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Helena, This isn't a family disagreement. This is a crime. And then he gave me the plan. Don't contact them again. Save everything. Texts, voicemails, posts. File a police report when stateside. Get a civilian attorney specialized in real estate fraud. That night, I started a folder on my laptop. I named it Meredith. And I began building a case piece by piece, while my family assumed I was too tired to fight. Week 1, my mom's voicemail was worried. "Helena, honey, why aren't you picking up? I'm getting worried." Week 2, it shifted. "Your father is hurt. We're your parents." Week 3, the mask slipped. "Is this about the house? We did what was best for the family. You're being selfish." Selfish. I was the one on a cot 6,000 miles away, working 14-hour shifts, while they sold my inheritance behind my back. Vivian joined in too, sending photos of the restaurant like she was rubbing my face in it. "Wish you could see this in person." "Mom's been crying because of you." Because of me. My father sent exactly one message. No greeting, no sign-off. "When you're ready to act like an adult, call me." I screenshotted everything. Every voicemail was saved. Every text logged with date, time, sender. They were digging their own hole with every family and selfish and you're overreacting, and they didn't even know it. Major Crow connected me with a civilian attorney, Rebecca Holt. Our first video call happened late at night my time. Her office behind her looked clean and bright and permanent, like the opposite of my deployment life. She didn't do small talk. "Walk me through your family dynamic," she said. I did. She pulled up a document on her screen. "This is the power of attorney your father filed," she said. "And here's the part that matters." She zoomed in on the notary stamp. "The notary is Greg Parson. He worked with your father at the bank for 9 years. I felt my stomach drop again. So it wasn't just my father. It was an old colleague willing to rubber stamp a forgery because Richard Wolfe seemed trustworthy. Rebecca's voice stayed calm, but firm. "Standard procedure requires the signer to appear in person before the notary," she said. "That didn't happen." She paused. "And if your sister funded her restaurant with proceeds from a fraudulent sale, every dollar is traceable." I sat back, staring at the screen. Traceable. My sister's pretty little legacy project wasn't a feel-good story. It was a paper trail with Edison bulbs. While the forensic document examiner worked, I stayed busy collecting supporting witnesses. I called Maggie Calloway again and asked about my grandmother's mental state when she made the will. "Sharp as a tack," Maggie said immediately. She balanced her own checkbook until 3 weeks before she passed. I drove her to the attorney's office. She told me after, "It's done. Helena gets the house." Then Maggie's voice lowered. "And she told me something else, sweetheart." I held my breath. She said, "Richard will try to take it. That's why I'm putting it only in Helena's name." My grandmother knew. She saw it coming. She tried to protect me. I sat there with my fist pressed against my mouth, eyes burning. And then, in a later email exchange, Maggie wrote one line that changed everything. "She tried to call you for the last 2 years. She'd phone your parents' house and ask them to pass along messages. She told me once, 'Helena never calls back. I think she forgot about me.'" The world narrowed to that sentence. For 2 years, my grandmother tried to reach me. and I never got a single message. Which meant someone, my father, answered those calls and intercepted them. He didn't just steal my inheritance. He stole the last 2 years of my grandmother's life and let her die believing I didn't care. That night, I cried. Not for the money. For the old woman sitting by her kitchen window, waiting for a call that never came, because my father decided silence was useful. When my deployment ended, I flew back in a blur of airports and exhaustion. On the plane, I turned my phone on. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. My mom. We're all coming to pick you up. Vivian's closing the restaurant. Dad's making your favorite pot roast. It's time to put this behind us. I could see it like a scene. They wanted to wrap me in sentiment before I could think. They wanted the old family reset button. Sit down, eat, pretend it didn't happen. I called my mom and kept my voice level. Don't come to the airport. I need a few days. She begged. I repeated it. Then I called Rebecca. I land Thursday. When do we file?
The complaint is drafted, she said. But you should know, Greg Parson is cooperating. The notary was scared, and scared people talk. Thursday afternoon, I got to my apartment near base, 1 bedroom, barely lived in, still smelling like cardboard. I dropped my duffel bag, locked the deadbolt, breathed out. Then I heard voices. I turned the corner into my living room and stopped. My father was sitting on my couch like he owned it. My mother was unpacking groceries like she lived there. Vivian was leaning against the counter, scrolling her phone like it was just another family visit. They all looked up at once. My father smiled, slow and controlled. Welcome home, soldier. Vivian lifted a white bakery box. I brought dessert from the restaurant. You have to try it. My mother rushed toward me with tears. We missed you so much, honey. I didn't move. I stared at them, then at the counter where my spare key sat next to a bag of lemons. How did you get in? My mother blinked like I was being dramatic. I used the emergency key, she said. You gave it to me before you deployed. I remembered. In case I died. Not in case they wanted to corner me. I opened the front door. Leave. Nobody moved. My father leaned back like he was settling into an argument he expected to win. You're going to throw your family away over a house? I felt my jaw tighten. This isn't about a house, I said. You forged my signature. The word hit the room like a slammed door. My mother flinched. Vivian's smile evaporated. My father stood slowly and walked toward the door like he was doing me a favor by leaving. At the threshold, he leaned in close enough that I could smell his aftershave. If you do what I think you're about to do, he said quietly, you won't have a family to come back to. I met his eyes. I haven't had one in a long time. They left. I locked the door, called a locksmith, changed the locks. Then I called Rebecca. File everything. Rebecca filed Monday. 2 days later, my father and sister were served, and the hearing landed in October. I showed up early in my dress uniform. Not to be dramatic, to make a point. I was an active duty officer whose rights were violated while deployed. And if my father wanted to tell a judge this was family business, I wanted the whole room to see exactly who he targeted. The courtroom smelled like old paper and disinfectant. The benches creaked when people shifted. Maggie Calloway sat near the window, with her hands folded, wearing a blue cardigan my grandmother once owned. A small photo album rested beside her. Then my family walked in. My father in a dark suit, red tie, trying to look composed, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. My mother's face was swollen from crying. Vivian looked smaller than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. She didn't look at me. The judge entered, Judge Patricia Whitmore, late 50s, glasses on a chain, voice that carried without effort. Rebecca stood and laid out the evidence like it was unavoidable gravity. Forensic handwriting analysis, not my signature. Deployment orders, I wasn't even in the country. Transfer records, $450,000 deposited directly into Vivian's account. Texts and posts, public admissions wrapped in family language. The defense tried good intentions. Judge Whitmore's response was cold. Was there written authorization? No, Your Honor. Then there was no authorization. Then Maggie Calloway took the stand. And when she said, steady as a blade, Margaret told me, Richard will try to take it. That's why I'm putting it in Helena's name. The air in the room changed. When Maggie added the part about the phone calls, how my grandmother tried for 2 years and believed I'd forgotten her, people shifted, like the truth had physical weight. My mother covered her face. Vivian stared at the table. My father didn't blink. Judge Whitmore reviewed her notes, removed her glasses, and looked directly at Richard Wolfe. This court finds clear and convincing evidence that Richard H. Wolfe fabricated a power of attorney bearing the forged signature of Helena Wolfe and used it to sell real property while the plaintiff was deployed overseas in active military service. Then she paused, long enough for everyone to feel it. This court is deeply troubled that the defendant exploited a window of time when the plaintiff was physically unable to protect her own property. And then she delivered the numbers like a sentence. $450,000 restitution, $85,000 additional damages, referral to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. She looked at my father and said, sharp, the law does not bend for good intentions, and what you did shows no good intentions at all. My father's hands opened on the table, like he'd forgotten how to hold himself together. His shoulders sagged. And in front of everyone, family, neighbors, strangers, he collapsed into his chair, like a man whose entire identity just got repossessed. Not a medical emergency, something worse. A man realizing control is not the same thing as power, and the court had just taken his away. I didn't walk out of that courtroom feeling victorious. I walked out feeling right, like the world had briefly corrected itself, even if it couldn't give me back what mattered most, those last 2 years with my grandmother. Justice doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it just feels necessary. If this story hit you in the chest, hit like and subscribe, because we post the kind of revenge stories that remind you boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. And tell me in the comments, which moment hit harder? My sister's "thanks for your service" text, or the judge reading the ruling out loud?